Hey guys, welcome back to Art 105. Today or this week we're going to be going over pen techniques, and so I'm just going to show you these really quickly. Basically, when we're working with pen, we have three or four, maybe there's a few more, but basically there's three basic kind of methods for building up tone. And the first one is hatching, and you guys will be able to see these. I have this sheet of paper in the module, and as well as some other things, just kind of explaining these things. But basically, hatching, if you guys want to see it, come on in here. You can kind of just see this. It's basically the use of just like these singular lines. So you can kind of just see like, can you see that? Sorry. The closer that you make them, the darker that value becomes. If you spread them out, the lighter that value becomes. So basically what this is, it's just using lines to create tone. The more values or the more lines that you put in there, the darker it becomes. The fewer lines in there, the more you space them out, the lighter it becomes. They can be straight. Most oftentimes they're straight and parallel. They don't have to be. They can be curved. They can be short. They can be long. So that's hatching. If you add intersecting lines, so this is hatching, so like hatching, and then you add intersecting lines, it's called cross hatching. Okay, the more lines that you add, naturally the darker it becomes. All right, and it can be very like kind of straight up and down. Sometimes people like to cross hatch like that, and sometimes people just like to like get a little bit more expressive with it. It doesn't really matter as long as you're kind of making these like hatch and cross hatch lines. That's called cross hatching, and those hatching and cross hatching are used together along with stippling. Basically, stippling is just like the same thing, except for these are little dots, and you just put little dots in an area. The more dots in an area, the darker that area becomes. Simple as that. Just a kind of a note with the stippling. This process takes forever. So if you're going to do it, you probably want to use like a different size, like different larger size pen to do this. But use whatever size is appropriate. But anyway, I don't recommend ever doing drawings with stippling. I don't see any point in it. But I do like to use stippling in along with these other methods. And then there's just like scribbling. And I don't know if this is a real pure technique, but it's just a variation basically of hatching and cross hatching. So scribbling, it's like there's just kind of like hatch and kind of cross hatch. It's just basically making kind of random marks. And the more that you kind of scribble in an area, naturally the darker it becomes. And so it can be kind of loopy. Sometimes people make it very kind of sharp edged, and it can be anything. Like you can make little kind of circles, and those kind of create values. Anything that's making marks is going to create tone. The more marks that you make in an area, the darker that area is going to be. And then also some things that can control that, you can kind of see we have different sizes over here. You can see I did a test of these pens, these Pigma, these Micron pens. And so I got an 005 all the way through the brush here. This is just kind of how small they are. So you can see this is the tip of my smallest. It's the 005 pen. You can see how small that tip is, really small. And so you can see like it makes these like super tiny marks, and you can see very faint lines. And I can make really faint lines. I can draw really light without really, and you can sketch things out without having to be really committed to those lines. Anyway, and then I also have like the brush. Oops, where's my brush? Which you can see here, it's kind of almost just like a brush, and it just makes really dark. It's like a brush pen. Okay, and so use whatever you want to, but just kind of creating tone with your pens. So one thing that you're going to do in your assignment this week is to create a 9-step value scale. And so you can see I've created one down here. And I like the 9-step for a couple reasons. I'm not going to go into it all, but basically it kind of breaks it up into 3 equal parts. So you have your kind of high key, your lightest values, then you have your mid-tones, your mid key, and then your darkest tones, which is your low key. And so like kind of 1 through 3, you might call those your high key, and 4 through 6, your mid. And basically, you just have 9 equal steps of like between black and white. And this is, it's good, I mean, to kind of identify and to be able to do this, just so when you're drawing, you can actually distinguish between different tones. Also, if you can look at up here, I have this little example that I created. Sometimes it's really helpful to kind of understand like to use your value scale to create certain kind of moods and effects in drawings. So this would be like what we call like a drawing. Some drawings are very light. They don't ever get very dark. So this might be the darkest value in a drawing. This would be like kind of considered like a high key drawing. And so they only use like the first 3 or 4 steps of the 9-step value scale in their drawing. And so they look like this. They almost look ephemeral, like they're just like they're going to disappear or something. They're very kind of light and airy kind of drawings. Then there's the mid-key drawings, and they're very tonal. There's just like kind of very grays. You don't get a lot of the really light values, and you don't get the really dark values. Those ones I call it the gray fog of death, those drawings. And that happens to me all the time, and I try to stay away from this. Some people like it, and if you want to create a very kind of somber tone, you could definitely do that. I try to stay away from those. I prefer like the full key. Well, before we get there, I'll just say the low key. These are drawings that are just very dark, and that's cool because you can create different moods and effects in your drawings. So you can use this value scale effectively to create different moods in your drawing, and use light effectively in your compositions. But for your assignment this week, you should use the full range. So white, black, and all those tones in the middle. So it should, if you're going to do a drawing of a little box like this, it should look like that. One last thing before we move on, cross contour lines. I just want to mention it really quick. Cross contour lines are imaginary lines that travel across the surface of an object. So if you can imagine like kind of latitude and longitude lines on a globe, they just kind of bend around in perspective. So if you're going to like shade like a ball or something like that, you might go along with the cross contour of those imaginary lines in perspective, kind of developing the form. See how this circle, like this looks more like a sphere, it looks more round, and this one looks more flat. And that's just because the lines are bending with the change in the surface. And you can do that again with your, all right, I found a better pen. In your drawing. So like if you're shading, like you can kind of go along with like the cross contour, and that just that helps the viewer understand visual information. So again, remember, drawing is language, and so you're trying to use the most effective language possible to communicate to your viewer. But basically, you can see these drawings. It's just like how to start a drawing. You can see like all these lines. They're very kind of light and sketchy. So when I sketch things out, you can kind of see like these kind of early stages, and you can see these drawings not drawn even very well. See, I need to change the perspective on this because it's a little bit off. But anyway, so you can make light lines, and then you can build up those tones. So I'm kind of using like the scribbling kind of technique in there, but you can just, if you draw light enough, like I'm kind of using like the edge of the pen, just not pressing down really hard, you can kind of create tone. And then if you want to go over, you just kind of press down, a little bit, and kind of reinstate those lines. And basically you can hide. See, I don't know if you can see like some of these early sketches from this dinosaur. You can see like they're off. But by the time you use a full range of value, those are pretty much, you don't see them. All right. So anyway, you can kind of see like these are some of the demos. I went up to school and actually grabbed some of these. But you can see like these are some of the demos from class. Just kind of showing people like, how when you start out a drawing, if this was your drawing, you keep it very kind of light and loose, and you can build things up. You can see like this handle on this little vase right here. You can see how light and kind of sketchy it is. Well, when you're this is like kind of like how to build it, like kind of that gestural sketch. And then once you kind of define or decide on those forms, you just kind of draw. You can sketch those lines back in and build up those forms, and then you can start building up those values in there. So anyway, you can see in here with this is with drawing the micron pens. You can do the same thing with the ballpoint. Have lots of different examples. In fact, I just want to show you maybe a couple more really quick. So in the end, you want to end up with a more finished work. So this is one of the demos I did from school with hatching and cross hatching with a ballpoint pen, a black ballpoint pen. And you can see I'm really trying to capture all those subtle changes in tone. You want to try to do that as well. Okay, so whether trying to capture the textures, like some of the highlights, just as long as you're matching up the tones, your drawing will be good, regardless of whether you're using hatching, cross hatching, stippling. The important thing is getting those tones matched up. You can see in here I use a wide variety of tones or mark making to fill things up. I got stippling going on in here, hatching, cross hatching, and kind of some scribbling going on. This is if you're using like kind of like a Sharpie. That I used a really thick Sharpie on this one, so I used some Sharpie pens, and it got really dark. So this kind of almost a little bit more of kind of those low-key sort of drawings a little bit. But anyway, so this week I would like you to do 2 drawings. So come back up. 2 drawings. Basically, I want you to do like a practice drawing like this. Maybe spend an hour or 2 trying to do a drawing, and I'd like you to just kind of see it through to the end. Even if you kind of screw it up, just push through and finish it. And it's okay. So it could look like this. And then, test out, like do some hatching, cross hatching, some stippling, just kind of experiment with your pens and see what they can do. I would suggest doing a value scale and try to incorporate that full range of value into your drawing. And then after you finish this drawing, then you got some practice in after an hour or 2. Then I'd like to spend, maybe 2.5 to maybe 4 hours, somewhere in there, and finish the drawing. I'm not finished with this one yet. You can see I've got this still life going, and I've got a Chia cat and Garfield and a book here, and so just a nice little simple still life that I'm working on. So hopefully I'll have this done for the module here really soon. All right, take care, guys. We'll see you later. Bye.